The following program contains explicit support of the U.S. military. If you suffer from pacifism, Randall may not be right for you. Check with a veteran.
Proclaiming the truth in the highways and byways of the world. Fighting for justice in the dark alleys of politics. Raising the voice of resistance to a fevered pitch. And he knows where to find the best and worst jail food in America. Randall Terry.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special edition of Randall Terry, the Voice of Resistance. Today is Memorial Day, the day that our nation remembers the men and the women who laid down their lives so that we could be free. We're going to go to various memorials here in Washington, D.C., look at the history of some of these conflicts and wars, and do our best to remember that little boys and little girls lost a dad. Wives lost a husband. Moms and dads buried their sons, or some of them simply never came home. It's not just a time when we grill hamburgers and sausages and steaks, hang out with our friends. It's a time specifically to remember the war dead. And that is what we will do today on this special edition of Randall Terry for Memorial Day. We'll be right back after a word from Tyrone Blaine.
Just turn the thing on. I got something to say. President Obama, have you lost your mind? Do you understand why we have a military? It is for the ability to destroy an enemy. And now you want to take away the cohesion of the unit and put inside there men who look at other men in lust. Hello. Do you want somebody working close to you, showering near you, being right next to you in bed at night, who says, hey, what's going on? Maybe you and I can get together later. You're sick.
Welcome to the program, friend. I'm here in front of the World War II Memorial on the Mall in Washington, D.C. This was put up to commemorate the lives and to remember the suffering of the over 400,000 soldiers that died in the European theater and the Pacific theater in World War II. It was World War II where we saw the incredible images of air battle, sea battle, land battles, where we had photographs sent back and put in our newspapers. There are many of us who still have relatives alive, myself included, who fought in World War II. It's impossible. I've been thinking about this, and I could not come up with a way to not only remember the war dead, but to also remember some of the political machinations that were going on. World War II was a war that really didn't need to be fought. At the end of World War I, they had the Versailles Treaty, the victorious Allies, and they basically disarmed Germany. They put up a buffer zone called the Rhineland and said that the Germans could never have a general staff again. They could not have an air force. They could not have U-boats, submarines. And because of pluck and courage and political acumen from Hitler and his leaders, those who led with him, they basically tested the will of the French and the British throughout the 30s, slowly but surely rebuilding, building their fighter air force, claiming that they were for airmail. They marched into the Rhineland in 1936 with 100,000 ill-equipped soldiers. The French had a duty at that time, according to the Treaty of Versailles, to repel the Germans. They were not to allow them to be in there. Hitler took a gamble and he won. What's a fact that came out after the war was that if the French had so much as lifted a finger to stop Hitler, the German generals had a plan to arrest him and to try Hitler as a criminal. And if the French had done their job, the war would have been never fought and Germany would have been stopped in 1936. But the French didn't do their job. Then, later on, when the Sudetenland, northern Czechoslovakia, was basically absorbed by the Germans, and the Munich Accord came, the false peace, in 1938, the Czechoslovakians at that point had armaments big enough to defend themselves. And with the French and the British and the Czechs could have crushed the Nazis. Even though the Nazis at that point were far stronger military than they were in 36, they still could have been stopped. But the French and the British simply did not want to fight. And that's where the term appeasement came from. Chamberlain talked about appeasing the Germans. At that time, politically, the word appeasement was not a dirty word. People thought it would work. Of course, Winston Churchill said no. Someone who appeases is somebody who feeds the crocodile, hoping that it will eat him last. When the Czech Republic fell, Churchill stood and said, now war is inevitable. Chamberlain, that foolish British Prime Minister, came back and gave his big speech saying, look, I've got this piece of paper signed by Herr Hitler, saying I felt he was a man I could trust. A handwritten document where the Germans and the English pledged to each other to never go to war. Of course, it was all a farce in Hitler's mind, and Chamberlain wanted to believe a lie. And in that moment, Churchill stood and said, this is shame and disgrace, and because of the Munich Agreement, because we carved up Czechoslovakia, war is inevitable. The last straw was when the Germans invaded Poland. At that moment, they still could have been defeated. They took their best machinery to invade Poland, and they left the Ruhr Valley, where all their munitions plants were, completely unguarded. England at that point had made a pledge to protect Poland. France had not. The English said to the French, we're going to bomb the Ruhr Valley, we're going to destroy their ability to make any more munitions, but we have to land in France to refuel, because at that time their bombers did not have the fuel capacity to leave England, bomb in Germany, and make it back. The French would not let them land. Step by step by step, the whole of Europe was taken by Hitler, and it was marked by points in which he could have been stopped. America, as I said earlier, lost 400,000 soldiers in both theaters of war, but it never had to happen. It happened because of cowardice, because of treachery, because of isolationism, because of people not wanting to pay a price to defend liberty, because of being willfully blind and pretending that Hitler was not really a menace to all of Europe. It's a tragedy what happened, and we just need to not let it happen again. You can look over the horizon right now with intense Muslim nations that intend to have jihad on the West. How long are we going to appease that? I'll be right back, and we'll take some closer looks at some of the monuments and the words that are inscribed here in the brass relief. It's really stunning. This is a special edition of Randall Terry on Memorial Day, when we remember and honor the war dead.
Some have argued that Washington was not that great a general. It wasn't until after the Revolution that Randall met him. Now Washington's the father of his country.
And Jesus said, woe to you when all men speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets.
Welcome back to the program, friend. Did you know that World War II was the last time that Congress declared war? We have the War Powers Act now, where the government gives the ability for the president to just commit troops. There's a lot of wrangling going on. But one of the interesting historical realities of World War II is that it was the last time that we as a nation declared war, and then the entire nation threw its energy into the war. As you'll see with these brass reliefs that are on your screen right now, we see people sitting around the radio listening to Franklin Roosevelt. Then we see people being recruited, saying, yes, I'll serve. We see the men getting on the transport. We see men filling torpedo tubes. And then we see the people back home, farming. It's really interesting that it's a woman driving that tractor. Again, showing the esprit de corps that was not only in the soldiers, but with all Americans. We see here a submarine. There we have our Air Force. And then, of course, landing, men dying right when they got off of the ducks, as they were called. Men fighting in the Pacific in unthinkable conditions. And then, of course, burying their fallen comrades, burying their dead, which is shown in this sad and graphic brass relief. And then finally, the liberation, where the men are being set free from the prisoner of war camps. And then, of course, the party begins. We see them dancing, laughing, a time of great jubilation. In many people's minds, the greatest generation, and a time of great growth and expansion for our country, for our economy, for what it meant to be an American, and hopefully to rid the world of the scourge of war. Our political leaders and some of our cultural leaders want to take the militancy out of the military. We're going to look at some of the words that are here, and you can see for yourself that some of these sayings are so politically incorrect today, you could probably not say them and get away with them. But it was that kind of call to the martial spirit that was needed to fight. For example, December 7, 1941, a day which will live in infamy. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people, in their righteous might, will win through to absolute victory. One cannot help but feel the stridency and the determination and the righteous wrath in these words. We are determined that before the sun sets on this terrible struggle, our flag will be recognized throughout the world as a symbol of freedom on the one hand and of overwhelming force on the other. Even here, the choice of the word crusade. You're about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. Here, honoring the mothers and the wives, they have given their sons to the military services. They have stoked the furnaces and hurried the factory wheels. They have made the planes and welded the tanks, riveted the ships, and rolled the shells. A martial military spirit even captured by the women of this country. The words here say, "Here we mark the price of freedom." Each of these gold stars you see behind me represents 1,000 war dead, 4,000 stars for the 400,000 soldiers that lost their lives. That is the price of freedom. The reason that you and I live in a free country is because young men and some young women in World War II died to stop the Nazi war machine. We remember them, we honor them, we thank them. I'll be right back after a quick break. As you leave this segment of the show with me, you're seeing the World War I Memorial. Don't go away, I'm Randall Terry.
devil, shut the door, keep out the devil. Shut the door, keep the Rudy in the night. Shut the door, keep out the devil. GOP gonna be alright. GOP gonna be alright.
What is the use of living, if it be not to strive for noble causes and to make this muddled world a better place to live after we are gone? Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back, friend. We're here now at the Korean War Memorial, often called the Forgotten War. A very, very dangerous war because we actually were fighting not only the North Koreans, but the Russians and the Chinese. We lost a little over 54,000 men in this war, called a police action. The Chinese lost 500,000 men. The Russians, they created what was called MiG Alley. The Russians were fighting us in the air because they didn't want us to take North Korea because we would be too close to them for our bombers to have an ongoing base. The Chinese didn't want us to be their neighbors. So we basically had three superpowers fighting in the Korean War. As you may remember, in May of 2009, North Korea formally withdrew from the armistice. So technically, North and South Korea right now are again in a state of war. There's not open fighting, although if Kim Jong-il gets his way, there might be. But this war, this tragedy, was a key moment in American history because it showed our resolve to stop communist expansionism. And even though it's the forgotten war, we don't forget the sacrifices that were made. God bless these soldiers. Evil shall slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Amen. Welcome back to the program, friend. We're here at the Vietnam War Memorial, where the name of every man killed in action and every man missing is literally inscribed on this wall. 58,000 men, a little over 58,000 men died, over 1,700 men never heard from again, missing in action. Of course, there have been different stories and movies about some of them still being held against their will. Over 5 million men, women, and children. We had our own 58,000 dead. The Chinese fought in this war. Between 7,000 and 9,000 is what they say died. You had soldiers from North and South Vietnam, soldiers and civilians in Cambodia, Laos. Over 5 million dead. It was a horrific, horrific war. We're honoring those who died. We are remembering them on this Memorial Day. But it's also impossible to look back at these wars and these conflicts and not to address some of the underlying principles and politics that were in play at the time. And the Vietnam War, for me personally, more than any other conflict that we've been in, brings rage to me because we committed men to die, but we did not commit them to victory. It was a war that we did not need to lose, but the policies of McNamara and others, both during the Johnson administration and the Nixon administration, basically hamstrung our soldiers. God forgive us, because when we finally did pull out, we paved the way by our exit for the brutal slaughter of hundreds of thousands of civilians. At the end of the day, the lesson that we need to learn from the Vietnam conflict is if we're going to go to war, we need to go to win, period. Not let the enemy say, oh, well, don't bomb this bridge, or don't bomb this airfield, or don't bomb this city. If we're going to fight, we have to fight to win. If we're going to shed American blood and pour out American treasure, it needs to be so that the principles of freedom and liberty that we stand for prevail. This has been a special edition of Randall Terry, the Voice of Resistance, on this Memorial Day. I hope you've enjoyed the show. And again, I urge you, take a minute to pray for the family members who lost a son, a brother, a dad, a husband. We will not forget. We will remember you. God bless you.